Greetings to everyone. A lot of people have asked me about Ahmad al-Shara's interview with Al Ikhbariya channel, specifically about my opinion on the economic aspect, because they know I pay a lot of attention to economic matters, and I know that it's the economy that shapes politics, not the other way around. Honestly, I didn't comment on it because I found that, well, it shows that Ahmad al-Shara is not an expert in economics. Contrary to what some people have said, like my friend Ghanem, who claimed that he speaks about microeconomics and macroeconomics skillfully, as if people were talking at Harvard or Yale or something just because he attended a meeting there. In reality, I saw that his answers were just meant to reassure, and that's the limit for Ahmad because he's not specialized in this field. In previous interviews, he used to say, "We leave specialized matters to the experts to answer." So I was surprised that he responded to these questions. And I was also surprised that the host, who is not specialized in economic affairs, was asking about the economic aspect. So I feel that what was done in the first part of the interview was illogical, not even rational in terms of the questions and answers. And a lot of the things that were mentioned, like the undersea cable and that it's in the Red Sea, and if it comes to Syria, it will provide energy, these things too. I mean, this is talk from people who are completely unprofessional, who really don't know anything about the economic side. I won't comment on this point because when a project like this is going to happen, for example, you need security. So it would have been better if the questions were directed toward the issue of security, not the economic aspect, especially to someone like Ahmad al-Shara, who is a military man. This is not an economic matter. The man doesn't know economics. But we should always talk about the interview with the governor of the Central Bank of Syria, Bernia, with Lebanon on Sky News. I mean, I followed the interview with great interest. It was a nice interview, an informed, balanced, and calm person, and he has a reassuring tone for people, for investors who want to enter the Syrian market. And we can say to a large extent he could be convincing to those people. But when we get into the details, there are a lot of important things for investors, how they think about them. And from that, we can understand the general economic situation. The general reassuring language that the country is fine and so on is not important. The economy speaks in the language of numbers, and numbers have to be precise. I was surprised by Lubna. It seems she agreed with Bernia, so they could be nice to each other. But if it were me or any foreign journalist specialized in the economic field, and of course Lubna is definitely better than me in this area, she is specialized in this field, which is good. But what caught my attention was the issue of tough questions. I'll give you examples of questions I wish you had asked. For example, what is the current liquidity ratio available in Syrian banks? No one knows what is actually available in Syrian banks as real liquidity. No one knows. This is a provocative question. Can you provide a clear timeline for the complete lifting of restrictions? These two questions force the governor to move from general statements to specific figures that concern the investor. Today, how can we talk to any investor and tell them to come and invest inside Syria when we don't even know the amount of liquidity? When might the currency collapse and when might it improve? And now the talk is that a group of funds has come in from expatriates, and this is natural for Syria. As a result, the economy was somewhat strengthened, and the currency was protected to a small extent. But this improvement was only slight, and today there is a real clear liquidity crisis in our market, and then there is extreme price inflation. Prices are soaring to levels that are completely out of touch with the financial reality. Today, when we say, for example, that the government has significantly increased salaries for people, at the same time, prices haven't gone down. On the contrary, they've gone up. So today we have a margin where if you want to control the market to allow for higher spending, for example, Lubna mentioned a very important point in the interview, and I find it very significant. She said that in Syrian culture, people are used to hoarding money, not spending it. She was encouraging people to spend in order to change this social culture, but changing a society's culture that is used to hoarding money in times of crisis takes a long time. You can't change the culture of a society that is accustomed to saving for tough times. This is the nature of Syrians. So today, asking people to release their liquidity is a risky matter. The second point I want to really focus on from the questions I saw is the issue of lost trust. How will you regain the trust of depositors who have lost the ability to withdraw their money for long periods? This question is the core issue. And what guarantees are you offering them? What is the guarantee? There is no guarantee. These are the questions that I find provoke the governor to speak from another angle. There's a side where they talk about restructuring, structural reforms, the existing ATMs, and so on. I mean, he gave general details, but if she had asked the question differently, do you have a plan for structural reform of the banking system? For example, what steps will you take to ensure that this crisis does not happen again? And here, the question pushes him toward broader details, and he really should have elaborated on them much, much more. Now, of course, the thing that stands out most to the average Syrian citizen who may not be well versed in economics, we're not talking now about major economists who think they're making big investments or anything like that. They will focus on a very important aspect for citizens in general, because this will affect their daily lives. If I remove 2 zeros from the currency, if we have from the 10,000 lira, it will become 10,100 lira. Their transactions will change, and I will talk about the positives of this project. I told her that there are both positives and negatives to this issue, but we took the risk of getting into it for the negatives. And I will focus on this aspect because, in my opinion, there is a very great risk in this matter. And it's essential that you talk a lot about this aspect. Talk about it in the media and everywhere, because this affects your daily life. Now, the positive side is that it makes daily transactions easier. This reduces the large numbers. Instead of carrying a big bag on your back and walking around with it to pay a certain bill, for example, you no longer pay, say, 5 million, the amount becomes 50,000. The number is somewhat acceptable. This positive aspect is something that a lot of people really feel. There's also something related to improving the psychological appearance. It gives the impression that the currency is stronger, but this is only temporary. We also have the third positive aspect that people talk about, which is the recalibration of accounting. Here it makes bank accounts and government ledgers easier to manage, especially in the face of high inflation. As you know, today, for example, if you want to send a remittance through any company like Al Haram, Al Admaus, or any of these money exchange companies, you no longer count your money by hand. They don't count it for you anymore. They just put it in a sack and weigh it. And if it's missing a few thousand, you might have to go back to them to get it sorted out. So the situation is dangerous. It has become exactly like the Venezuelan situation. This is a segment. Third, the negatives. And here you should really focus on the negatives. Don't be dazzled by the problem with the Syrian government is that it cares more about appearances than about substance. And here we will talk about this issue. This does not address the core of the liquidity crisis in the economy. Meaning, if they keep manipulating things, production remains absent, and trust in the banks weakens, then the zeros will gradually return. Pay attention to this point. Inflation in Syria will increase, and you can see it now. From before the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime until now, inflation has been on the rise. The situation has never improved, not at all. Just look at how prices keep going up. With the absence of production, we have no factories, we don't produce anything. We are a non-productive country, a consumer country at the moment. So to build any real economy, you have to start with production, and only then think about these other things. Also, there is a lack of trust in the banks. One businessman told me about how dealing with banks works and what it's like. He lives in Lebanon, moves between Syria and Lebanon, and he shared with me certain ideas about people who have a lot of money, who have large deposits, and significant financial capabilities. They call them core assets, meaning real estate or other things, and how they should deal with them. So there is a big problem in this area. In my opinion, if you remove the 2 zeros without solving the problem of inflation, lack of production, and weak trust in the banks, the zeros will come back again, and this will become a very, very disastrous situation. Now, the cost of printing, don't think that when you print money, it's not really costing you anything. I know that the new system currently in Ahmed al-Shara's government says that we have an agreement with the Russians and the money was previously paid to them by Bashar al-Assad. But today, the Ahmed al-Shara government is required to pay the money to Russia. This is the point you are focusing on. So, this is an economic burden on the currency, meaning that paper money has a real cost. They are not printing it for you for free, and it costs a lot. Look at the previous videos. I have explained this matter to you. These are important points for economists, so you can understand the current reality. Right now, there is confusion in the market. In the first few months, there will definitely be confusion because people are not used to the new currency, and this increases the chances of fraud and exploitation of consumers. Today, the police force is not widely present throughout Syria, so problems will increase. And today, with hunger and poverty, even a simple financial problem can sometimes lead to crime. People are hungry and exhausted, so the timing of this project In my opinion, neither Barnia nor Ahmed al-Shara thought differently. I'm speaking economically. My concern is for the people, not the government. My heart is with the people. There is also a lack of trust. Without financial reforms like controlling the deficit, stimulating production, and attracting investments, people will not believe that the lira has become strong just by removing zeros. This is a very important point. And today, as you have seen, there are many contracts that have been submitted. Ahmed al-Shara said there are 28 billion, and by the end of the year, it is expected to reach about 100 billion. Okay, this is the theoretical talk, but how do you apply it in reality? Out of the 28, maybe only 4 or 5 billion will actually remain, and this is normal. It's not a crisis, so pay attention to this point. Some projects have been handed over to Saudi Arabia, meaning they signed memorandums with Saudi Arabia, and the same project was signed with another country. So there is a lack of a systematic work environment, and this is natural for a newly established state that has many problems and budgets and is trying to please more than one country and more than one regional power. But this does not change the fact that in economics, no one will have mercy on you. Your people might because they are kind-hearted, but in economics, no one will have mercy on you. The state must not collapse. So let me give you examples of countries that have succeeded and failed. For example, Turkey. In 2005, Turkey removed 6 zeros from its currency, the lira, as part of a very broad reform program. This program was not simply a matter of a presidential decision and the story was over. No, there was support from the International Monetary Fund. The experience was successful, and there was a commitment to the IMF in the best possible way. Argentina and Venezuela, for example, repeated the experience several times without real economic reforms. That is, they didn't build an economy, they didn't invest broadly, so the zeros came back quickly. And to this day, their situation is still a disaster economically. If we look at the worst country, in my opinion, among these countries, it's Zimbabwe. They removed zeros maybe dozens of times, not just once, twice, or 3 times, dozens. I don't even remember the exact number, but every time we study something in economics, when I did my master's, I studied Zimbabwe as a model, and I ended up with something like 3 pages more than once about how they removed zeros, and inflation completely swallowed up the currency there. The situation is extremely catastrophic. So if we want to revive the Syrian economy, and I respect Bernia and the expertise he has, it's clear from his talk that he's knowledgeable, smart, calm, composed, and pleasant to talk to. In my opinion, he should advise the government properly because he's better than the government, better than the leaders in the government. He should advise them on very important detailed matters and advise them to be patient. I know how all Syrians feel when they hold the currency and see the picture of Hafez al-Assad or Bashar al-Assad. Well, we don't have Bashar al-Hafez, but this hurts any Syrian. That's just how it feels. But let's be logical, people. Hafez al-Assad ruled Syria for 30 years. He's part of Syria's history. You can't erase him. In his time, Hafez al-Assad tried to do something really despicable. He tried to erase everything related to the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria, but they came back again. No one can erase anyone. History is written by 2 kinds of people, the victor and at the same time the blatant dictator. Unfortunately, we've never been victorious at any point in our history. We've always been the result, not the decision makers. So if Hafez al-Assad's picture stays for a certain period, it's not a problem. You can just turn the currency over if you don't like it, but keep using it for now until you achieve economic stability. Today, there are much more important crises for Syria than the issue of changing the currency. This is advice from someone who loves his country very, very much. Take your time with this project and don't rush.